Let's get more insight now in Brazil, and I'm joined via Skype by Otaviano Canuto. He's a senior fellow at the Policy Center for the New South and is a former vice president of the World Bank. Thanks so much for taking time to chat with us. We appreciate it. And
Pleasure.
With your international experience, I just want to get your reaction to what you saw. I mean, I was here working yesterday. I immediately thought of January 6, 2021 in the United States. What's your reaction to the action of the Bolsonaro supporters this weekend?
It's good to be here, Sean, even if for commenting such a bad news and so on. Well, what happened on Sunday was, to some extent, to a large extent, foretold. You know, former President Bolsonaro tried to follow the steps of former President Trump here in the U.S., with the difference that it was not to impede the assumption of President Lula, but it was aimed at creating some sort of chaos and an environment that might be conducive to military intervention. And to some extent, the methods were quite similar. You know, Bolsonaro, even if he denies, and of course, and even if he has somewhat condemned the destruction of things and so on, the fact of the matter is that he never accepted the election. He created the fake news of elections being rigged and so on, and that and cultivated this long number of followers that felt that the election was unjust, unfair, and that a minor bad thing would be to do as they did. They have been camping in front of the military headquarters in Brasilia and in other places of the country for more than 2 months now. And the example coming from Bolsonaro, who left the country instead of participating in the assumption, in the inauguration, it's an attempt to repeat the methods utilized by President Trump.
And it's also my understanding that the military have been asked repeatedly to get those group of squatters out of there. So it's going to raise questions on how this unfolded. But let's focus on Brazil's currency right now. It's weakened on the back of this invasion of government buildings. The fact that this did happen and the fact that it could have been avoided, do you think we're going to see more economic fallout?
Well, the fact of the matter is that it was not a good signal in terms of perception of risks and so on from the standpoint of investors. But as long as it's not followed by some sort of intensified radicalization, things will tend to get back to normal. The major doubts about Brazil from the standpoint of investors is whether President Lula will adopt a very much too proactive fiscal policy. Right. But for the time being, we don't have the details. Probably the Minister of Finance will come out with some more detailed plans, including on the fiscal side this week or next week. And to be seen. The fact of the matter is that there has been much more noise than substance to the context. And by the way, last year, the capital inflows to Brazil already take into account the perspectives of after election have been the greatest ever.
Otaviano, this is a nation that remains bitterly divided, and it's not going to come together quickly. So how has Sunday's attack impacted the markets in Brazil?
Now, of course, the markets immediately felt the shock, but what matters mostly is the long-term perspective. You said it all. It will depend a bit on the unfolding of the insurrection, and I explain.
Right.
The insurrection itself has been a political shot on Bolsonaro's own feet, in the sense that probably other guys in Brazil will try to replace him as a leader of the extreme right. But also will depend on how the government reacts.
It's going to be interesting.
The government has to be strong in pursuing and chasing and finding the responsible people for for financing the whole thing. But on the other hand, Lula cannot fall into a trap of radicalization himself. He has to emphasize the rule of law, no matter what the position of politicians.
Otaviano, about a decade ago, Brazil was poised to be the 5th largest economy in the world. What happened, and what's the overall state of the Brazilian economy right now?
Well, the country has been facing what I call a double disease. On the one hand, low levels of productivity growth. And this is a major obstacle to returning to the levels of growth that the country had in the past.
Right.
And unless, of course, in times of a very favorable commodity price, as 2022 was one like this, and that's how the Brazilian GDP growth last year surprised many, most forecasters and so on. The other problem is to refigure the quality of public spending. The ratio of public spending in Brazil to GDP is high as compared to other comparable countries, but the profile of that spending is not that much productive when it comes to lifting productivity, as I said. So the country needs, over time, to review its public spending profile so as to open space for more public investments in infrastructure,
Right.
in high quality education, and in boosting the health system. But there is a window of opportunity for Brazil, which is the following. It is the energy transition. Overall, Brazil, as far as carbon emissions,
Right.
on the energy side, is one of the cleanest in the world. The ratio of renewable energy in the consumption of energy in Brazil is about 50% because of hydroelectricity, but also the rising use of energy and of wind energy and solar energy. Where Brazil has a weak spot is, with respect to carbon emissions, is on the Amazon.
Yeah.
Is Amazon deforestation. So if Lula puts it back on track, as it was at his time in government.
Undoes a lot of the things that Bolsonaro did, then that's what people are going to be watching. Exactly.
And this is one. Look, but there is a whole work of rebuilding regulatory agencies, environmental regulatory agencies, rebuilding the surveillance of the Amazon and so
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
this
if
is
Lula manages to do so, that will open a window for a lot of resource from abroad.